Hey everyone, it's Alex. I just realized this morning we've got a new moon a coming, so I was like, let me jump on and pull some cards. And I'm really glad that I did because I think one of the things that I'm really noticing with people right now is, everyone's dealing with transitions. Like everybody's dealing with transitions. Whether it's a personal journey or like an inward journey or an outward change. And I think it's really important to kind of find these moments of sweetness to kind of slow down and reflect and say, like, where am I? Where am I going? Do I like where I'm going? What needs, what's next for me? It could sometimes feel like there's so many things in the air that it's hard to prioritize what's happening. And I think too, there's always this process in healing, especially if you're more of a sensitive person, empathic person. You're taking on you feel the world so much, you feel other people so much, and um, sometimes it can be hard to remember that you do have the power to not only influence, the space around you. You do influence the space around you, whether you know it or not. Um, but also that you get to create the situation that you want to be living in. That there's a creative element to being an empath. You don't just, you're not a sponge just for the sake of taking on everybody's garbage. It's like there's a transmutive, digestive process that occurs here where we understand the world so deeply so that we can create it better. So this is the space that we're in. Okay. And I love that this is kind of what's happening because it's really reflected in the cards that I'm pulling today. Um, First, we start with the sun. And, this is a new moon in Cancer, so the sun is in Cancer. Cancer, to me, like my eldest is a Cancer stellium, so I feel like I've gotten so many lessons from Cancer, in raising her. And I think there's just this real wisdom that the emotions have, and there's a wisdom to creating a sense of comfort. There's a wisdom to nurture. And it's so particular, it's so unique, it's so unique to the individual. What is nurturing for one person is not nurturing for another. What supports one person in their growth is not supportive of another. So I think it's like there's this real personal element to Cancer. And this real kind of like touchy-feely energy in the sense of like what feels really good, what could be better, how do we create this sense of sanctuary within the self and within the spaces that we're inhabiting, whether it's your home, your community, your workplace, there's it's like really like connecting in so deeply with the feelings in terms of information. And while I think that that can also have this other effect of people taking their emotions as fact and being very reactionary as a result of that. Like think of it in terms of sensory information. This is what we're sort of picking up from the world around us. It's not something that we, necessarily have to take to heart or take as a fact, but it's information. And the sun here is reminding us that we can we can create the situation, the circumstance that we want to inhabit, you know? And I know that that can feel like a really far away thing for some people. I know I've been in that place where I'm like, I know where I want to be and it's not here. So that can be tough, but you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. You have to start with your body. You have to start with maybe making something. It could be just like improving a corner of your home. It could be drawing a picture of something that some ideal, space you want to create or feel. But it's getting it so deeply in touch with what it is that you want to feel and be inspired by is something that I'm really feeling. It's like I want to look at something and be inspired. Um, and it's like it's a very personal, the sun and the moon are both very personal. This is going to be unique to you. And but I would say, even though that this is a new moon in Cancer, which is very quiet, reflective, that there's this creative element, and of course we have big astrology later in the week, and that's kind of ramping up whatever. I'm not going to talk about that. Um, uh, for various reasons, enough people are talking about that. Um, you really need to listen so deeply to yourself. And crossing the sun, we've got the Prince of Cups. So there's this element in which, if you create from this place of wisdom within yourself, knowing yourself, being self-aware and knowing it, knowing what I need to be inspired, knowing what I need to feel like I need to keep, what I need to keep going, what I need to, um, connect deeply to my soul purpose on earth. The Prince of Cups is meeting you. Okay. Prince of Cups is like, um, here's a drink of water on your journey, there's ways in which we are, or spirit, or people, or how spirit works through people, or um, how we are meeting God, or whatever you call it, that it's like it peeks out and it finds us, you know. And this feels like a moment where that's happening because um, one of the hard things about the sun and one of the hard things about personal expression is you're not necessarily going to get validation from where you're looking, so it might not be, you might be like, oh, I made this thing. And, it could be that people around you are like so self-absorbed in their own problems that they are like, oh, that's cool and move on. So, so you're not necessarily, or like whatever your relationships are with people, maybe, I mean, I feel lucky with people in my life. Not everybody is lucky like that. Um, but there's this sense of validation that comes from a spiritual place. And maybe that does come through a person. I'm just saying it doesn't have to. And I feel like there's these little windows where spirit is like, hey, you're on the right track. Keep going. Okay, we're moving into the Knight of Swords energy. So it's very fast moving. I get with that like a sense of sort of like, I mean, it's such a flutter of energy. And also, I do feel like kind of swooping into action as a result of something. It could be that you express yourself, and as a result of that, things happen. And then maybe there's a sense of, something you have to explain, something you have to communicate, something you have to do, to kind of like, okay, now we've got to keep this going. It reminds me of like when you're learning to ride a bike and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing it. And now I have to like really do it. So I don't fall, so it's like those kind of like beginning stages of something where you're really trying to move forward. And so there might be a little bit of chaos connected to that. I'm pulling a clarifying card just because I just feel like that's fast moving energy and some more information is great. I do have the Prince of Wands in reverse, so I do think there's mistakes could get made. I think again, responding, not reacting is going to be like a good mantra. Okay, what information do we have now? Where do I create from this? What information do I have now? What do I create from this? That's going to be like this very consistent inner and outer conversation with the world. We've got adjustment in the future, and that is reversed. So that's another one maybe I want to bring some clarity to. Four of discs in reverse. Ugh. Five of swords in reverse. I mean, so, there might be some like existing imbalances. I'm gonna say you probably know what they are. You probably already know ways in which your stability has been challenged, ways in which the balance has been off. It's really clear to you. Ways in which you have not been heard. Five of Swords in reverse is just being like, wow, I'm like banging up against a wall, you know. Um, and I do think that there's a level, I like the Five of Swords in reverse here because I do feel like there's a level of directness around handling it, where it's just like, okay, like we could play in this tug of war forever, but like this is this is the South, this is the future. Where the fuck are we going? You know? Where the fuck are we going? So it's like it's kind of this idea of when you are working through conflict, that it's like, what's on the other side of the conflict? It's like people who kind of, um, I work with a lot of couples, so it's like I'll feel like there's this push and pull between differences of opinion or this kind of thing. And it's like, well, what is the goal? What do you both want? Like what is on the other side of I have to have it my way? You know, is it because you're afraid and you just want control? Is it because you really care about where the future is going? And I think that that's maybe an important question to ask yourself anytime some conflict maybe comes up for you, you know, how much do it's like your reactions are going to be challenged because the way you've reacted in the past is not going to work. Okay. Pulling another clarifier, the Emperor, this is about long-term sustainability. So if you, the building blocks that you're putting into this future that you're creating are not stable, they are going to fall. Okay? They're going to fall. If they are stable, if they are connected to a larger vision, and they're like, okay, we don't know what the whole building is going to look like, but we see this foundation and let's lay this brick here, you know, together. I say together because I feel like there's maybe some interpersonal dynamics with that, but it could also just be in relationship to yourself and how you're relating and creating. Past in relationship to the present, we've got Princess of Wands in reversal. So again, this is like our impulse. We can't always trust our impulses. You know, I teach intuition. I have a strong intuition. I want people to listen to their intuition. Your intuition is not an impulse. Your impulse is going to be usually a reaction out of fear, just like, oh my God, you know. That's like, it's like, oh, the building's falling. I gotta hold it up. And the intuition is gonna be like, the building's falling. It's not coming back. You know, the intuition is very frequently inconvenient and things we don't want to hear, which is not a popular opinion. The past, we've got Six of Cups in reversal. I mean, as a mother, I definitely relate this to my children. If you have children or if you have creations or things that you have personally nurtured, um, maybe you're learning from that, you're reflecting on what has been wonderful about that, what could you have done better? It's going to be really, really important to not be hard on yourself and to ruminate and get stuck there because it's like this is fast moving energy. You got to keep it moving. Okay. Ruminating really is not helpful in this energy. So if you feel that rumination energy, I always tell people like just move, like get into the body somehow, just make some space, let things kind of, you know, move, stretch the joints, get things moving. Um, and don't fall into the hole, okay? Your advice, Five of Wands, Queen of Cups. Interesting. Feel like this is choose your adventure, choose your own adventure. Five of Wands or Queen of Cups. You could either get into it, you know, um, you could get into it. Five of Wands like really struggles with boundaries. It's like if there's some part of you that doesn't like to hear the word no, it's like fuck off, right? It's like it's temporary energy. It does shake things up a bit, and I do think it shows you other people involved kind of like what's important to you, like through conflict, you know. You could also get there through the Queen of Cups, which is reflecting, you know, just reflect on like, how am I? What do I need? What's going on here? Okay. Queen of Cups is she's like some nice heart medicine and that, which might be better for Cancer vibes. Okay. Definitely better. I'm just gonna say that. Eight of Discs. Um, is a clarifier here. There's a practical element, there's a lot moving, but there's also these like practical pieces of like, um, what do we need to put into place? I feel like we're not going to be into that energy, okay? And I also think with the sun, the danger here is the sun is really wanting to shine. The creative force is shining. So I think you want to be careful with the Eight of Discs of like, don't fall back into doing things how you know how to do them. You know, because I feel like there's some inspiration, some new things, just be open to change. Okay? Be open to change. Change is inevitable at this point. Like, get with it. Get on the train of change. It's definitely happening. So, Eight of Discs is kind of like head down. This to me is like the people who kind of like, um, mm, I'm thinking of people who kind of like externalize their anxiety by trying to control their environment a bit, you know? Um, it's good until it's not, you know what I mean? Like, you want to make sure that you're taking care of your day to day and you're taking care of your things, but you don't want to be blind to what is trying to come in. Okay? And I think that that's just it's important to kind of recognize your blind spots. Be reflective. Don't take any conflicts personally. Hopefully, don't create too much of it. Um, and do your shit, but don't get lost in your shit. And, I think we're headed in some good directions. Wild and crazy stuff. So, I love you. That's what I've got for you. I'll see you next time, okay? I hope y'all are thriving and please just let me know how this moon is going for you in this week, as a matter of fact. I also want to mention I have an intuitive development intensive coming up in August. I will link that below in the comments and come learn with the master. Okay. I love you. Take care.